Welcome to Harmonize Your Life Conversations on Self-Care for Women of Color with your host, Dr.Toni G. Alvarado. We're glad to have you with us again this week. It's been an exciting month. This is the month of March, which is Women's History Month. And each week we have had exciting guests on our podcast to help us with this conversation, to take us deeper as we dive into what it means, what self-care means for us as women, and particularly as women of color. This week, just like all the previous weeks in this month, we have a dynamic guest that will be with us today that I'm so excited about. I'm excited about her because I know her work personally, and I know you're going to enjoy this conversation. Our conversation today is with Felicia White English. Felicia White English is a clinical social worker licensed to practice in the state of Georgia. Felicia has 17 years of experience working in the human services arena. She maintains a private practice with offices located in Midtown, Atlanta, and Conyers. She treats a host of behavioral health diagnoses and works from a patient-centered approach. Felicia is currently completing her doctorate in clinical social work at Tulane University. She holds a master's degree in social work from Clark Atlanta University in Atlanta and a bachelor's degree in social work from Limestone College in Gaffney, South Carolina. In her spare time, Felicia enjoys traveling, shopping, and spending time with her family and close friends. Again, I know you're going to enjoy her. I know her work personally, and I'm excited to welcome Felicia White English to our podcast today. Welcome, Felicia.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm excited about this conversation. You are bringing up the rear in our month-long conversation. This month we have we started out the month with Dr. Anastasia Alvarado, and then Bishop Vashti McKenzie was our guest on earlier this month. Dr. Kimberly Jeffries Leonard it has been on our show. Latasha Lewis, and now you are helping us with this conversation this month, the month of March, which is Women's History Month. So I want to just ask you, Felicia, as we start our conversation, why licensed clinical counseling? What motivated you to go into this profession?
I think for many people, there are life situations that kind of dictate where it is that you go. So sometimes if your parents are attorneys, that kind of is the natural progression. If your family or members of your family, your parents are educators, you tend to go forward with that profession. But for me, it was just a little different. I think that most of us, those of us who are, in the helping field, you get or receive obviously enrichment with helping people. And so for me, social work was kind of the natural progression. When I think about it, I started my undergrad at Benedict College in Columbia, South Carolina, and Benedict only had 3 disciplines or 3 majors. And so engineering, which I could not see myself doing, education, definitely could not see myself doing, and then social work. So it was sort of a gravitational pull, if you will, to social work. And once I got in and completed some of the core classes, it was just something that meshed well with me, and I kept at it.
Okay. So the courses in social work kind of lit a fire in you, or at least piqued your interest in this profession?
They did, absolutely. And I think, too, so we always, just as humans, by nature of who and what we are and how we're built, there is always this inherent sort of sense where you want to help people. and social work really gave me that opportunity. It afforded me that opportunity to be able to help people, to support people, which is what I like to, or how I like to frame the work that I do.
Yeah, yeah. And being in a helping profession myself, being in ministry and also being a life coach, um, it really does. There is a pull. There is something on the inside of us that we know that we're called in. I have to say, to be in any profession, you need to know that you're called, or at least have a sense of calling into that profession. But, being in the helping professions are somewhat different in my estimation, because the people's needs tend to be the thing that we are drawn to. And there are so many needs, and there's so many people out here who need help, particularly in this area, in clinical counseling area. um, when I think of clinical counseling, um, a lot of times people do not want to admit that they need counseling. They need the help, but oftentimes they don't know how to identify that they need this help, or sometimes they're embarrassed to say they need this type of help. Why is that?
Sure. I think some of it is cultural.
Mm-hmm.
I think some of it is also societal. So from a cultural standpoint, particularly in communities of color, some of the first things that we say is, or even what we've been conditioned to think and believe is, all right, if we pray about it, it'll be okay.
Oh.
I'm gonna give it to God. There is also some mistrust that
Mm-hmm.
goes with, coming and, being very vulnerable in an office. Because think from a historical standpoint, there was not a place, there was not a mechanism where people of color were able to go and be comfortable outside of their homes, to be able to talk to people.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
we have been conditioned where whatever goes on in my house stays in my
Oh,
house.
yes,
And
yes, yes. We've heard that. I mean, I heard that
yeah,
growing up, and I even said that at times to my children, coming
sure,
along, because we do what we parent the way we were parented until we learn
sure,
differently. Until we learn
sure.
differently. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So there are just so many reasons why we traditionally, especially in communities of color, why we have not sought therapy. I think some people would perceive it as a weakness.
Mm.
Anytime that I am partnering with, someone who comes into my office, I encourage them. I tell them that, therapy isn't because there is something wrong with us, right? So taking that
Yes.
negative connotation off of it.
Mm-hmm.
But really, we go to therapy because there is something wrong with the world that we live in.
Oh,
And
what a
going,
paradigm shift.
sure, absolutely, right?
It's
And I
not
think,
that there's something wrong with me, but it, the world is messed up, and we're in that
correct.
world.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And really moving the thought, the discussion from there is something wrong, there is something amiss, to how do we empower you? How do we strengthen you? Whatever it is that you're dealing with,
Mm-hmm.
being a therapist, you really kind of act as a sounding board. Those people who come, for me at least, who come and I partner with them, those people bring all of the strength in the world with them. And sometimes we just have to figure out, or have to um, negotiate sort of how it is that they bring those strengths to the forefront, how it is that we manufacture that. We look at those strengths that they have
Mm-hmm.
and really sort of, build them up and really enhance that.
And it's similar to, it's not the same, but it is similar to coaching, life coaching that I do, because what we tell people as a life coach is that we're not here to fix you. There's nothing wrong
Sure.
with you. We're not here to fix you, but we're here to help you draw out of you what's already in you. and help you
Sure.
recognize what's in you, your values, your gifts, your skills, your abilities, your strengths, and your weaknesses. So we help you identify those things and build on those things so that you can move your life forward. And so,
Sure.
in the same way, it's not about fixing people. And I appreciate your approach and the way you're helping us see therapy and the need for it in our lives. Wow, that's amazing. Let me ask you this question. In When we talked at you did my self care retreat this year. Thank you.
Sure.
You were on the faculty this year for the self care retreat, and we talked about um, stress management. And we talked about the fact that there is no getting away from stress. We all deal with stress. Stress is a part of life. Like you were saying, it's nothing wrong with us, but it's the world that we live in. And we live in a very chaotic and stressful society, right?
Sure. Absolutely.
And so we know there'll always be deadlines, delays, disturbances that increase our levels of stress, the level of stress that we experience on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, basis. And some things just come, crisis just happen, life just happens. And so you helped us to start thinking about ways to redefine stress and our responses to stress. So how can you just share a little bit of what you shared with us at the retreat about how therapy helps us in managing stress?
Right. So I think first off, therapy helps to hold you accountable. So the relationship that you have with your therapist really is one of accountability, right?
Mm.
There is the expectation that you will come to your appointments, you will come prepared to do the work, and
Mm-hmm.
recognizing and acknowledging that nothing about therapy is easy. It really forces you to confront some of the things that are going on in your life, those things that are maladaptive, that
Mm-hmm.
we have been conditioned to just deal with, to just kind of roll with.
Mm-hmm.
You learn more about acceptance, and a part of that is, some of the things that we think or we have been conditioned to say, oh, you know what, I'm going to have a hectic day. It's just going to be stressful. You
Mm-hmm.
learn, you learn tools by which to kind of mitigate and minimize your stress. And so, I talk to people about self-care.
Mm-hmm.
Some of that is, do you go and you, instead of buying McDonald's or
Mm-hmm.
Burger King or whatever it is, going out to dinner or getting your nails done,
Mm-hmm.
is it that you put that money to the side and you go and you have a massage? Or
Right, right.
is it that you utilize that money, if you don't have insurance, to find a therapist who offers either a sliding fee,
Mm-hmm.
a therapist who has a reduced price? I think that sometimes we take care of everything and everybody. We've been conditioned to do that,
Yeah.
and that contributes to our stress. And so again, working with your therapist helps you to kind of mitigate some of that, to learn good coping skills by which you can utilize to live day to day.
Wow. I heard so many things in what you just said. I want to tease some of those things out if that's okay with you because I mean we
Sure.
could we could have a conversation on just about every point you made. We really could. We could take each one of those and take 6 weeks and talk about them. Um but there were a couple of things that stood out in what you said. Number one, you said that therapy, we have to be willing to come and do the work.
Correct.
Do the work. And I think it would a lot of times that people don't realize it's the same with counseling, it's the same with coaching, it's the same with pastoring people. We can preach, we can teach, we can counsel, we can coach, but the individual has to be willing to do the work. And
Right.
so when you said do the work, say a little bit more about that. What does that mean? We have to be willing to do the work.
Right. So I oftentimes will give my client partners homework. And so it could be that I'm expecting you to journal. And
Hmm.
I do this thing, and I talk to people about journaling in color, and that kind of helps
Please
you.
talk about that. You know that
Sure.
right there really that was revolutionary for me because I
Sure.
have journals. I have a million journals, But I didn't really enjoy journaling until I met you, until I started working with you. And it was the journaling in color that really, really helped me enjoy journaling. So, yes, share about that journaling in color.
Sure. So when I give someone a homework assignment for journaling, so journaling can be a monumentous task, right? So we don't necessarily know where we have this blank sheet of paper that's staring back up at us, and you don't necessarily know what to write or how to
Mm-hmm.
write.
Mm-hmm.
And you also don't know where to start. And so I tell people, start with the way you feel.
Mm-hmm.
And how you do that is with colors. So you start off with black or blue, pink, purple, green, whatever your favorite colors are, however it is that you denote, the colors. They could mean anything to you. So, for example, when it is a bad day, a dark day, you journal in black. When it is a blue day where you're sad, you journal in blue. If it's a day where you are upset, you're journaling in red. But
Mm-hmm.
then those days that are good days that, you're feeling good, you're kind of in your zone, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
those are the days where you journal in your pinks or your greens, or you journal in your purples, whatever
Mm-hmm.
colors, that appeal to you.
Mm-hmm.
And what I tell people is I don't want you to go back and look at what you read. What I want you to do is go back and look at your moods. And so you will know
Mm-hmm.
if you have 3 or 4 days where you are journaling in black and blue, that really there is some
Mm.
accountability that
Okay.
lies with that.
There's a
What
red
was
flag
going
there too.
on?
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. What was
Mm-hmm.
going on those days, and how is it that we could mitigate that? Alternatively, if you are going back and reviewing your journal and
Mm-hmm.
you see that you've had a week that you have your pinks and your purples, then those
Mm-hmm.
are the days that we need to figure out what it was that you did. How can we remanufacture that
Okay.
and utilize that to help us
Mm-hmm.
to feel better?
Wow. 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 Whew. Okay, so journaling in color is one of the things.
Sure.
But the point is, we have to be willing to do the work, whatever that is, because those homework assignments, you expect us to have that done when we talk again. I know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There is that accountability,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If I have given you a homework assignment, and it could be, maybe someone who is not familiar with journaling. So I
Mm-hmm.
tend to send my people on a hunt, if you will, to
Mm-hmm.
go to, local stores or online and look for certain journals, and those journals that really speak to them, because they are more inclined to practice the activity if it is with a book that, they spent time with, they
Mm-hmm.
selected the gift, maybe the book spoke to them, and whatever it is that they were going through at the time of selection.
Mm-hmm.
So we got to do the work. Part of that is, also, having those difficult conversations
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
things that, historically we swept under the rug, whether
Mm-hmm.
it is,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
relationships that are not serving to you, whether they're relationships with family, friends, significant others, your children, really being in a place, in a space where you are open, you are vulnerable, and
Mm-hmm.
you need to
Mm-hmm.
come
Mm-hmm.
again and be prepared to do the work. Otherwise, you're not spending your money wisely.
Wow, wow. And there are two things I wanna point out here. One, um, when you're talking about being honest with yourself, with your spouse, or your significant other, family, friends. I tell people self-care is everything from being honest with yourself or honest with your spouse or whoever, to taking a bubble bath or going on a vacation or whatever. It's all of that. And so a lot of
Sure.
times we're not honest about our feelings. Number one, we're not in touch with our feelings. And I think therapy helps us get in touch with those feelings and to get courage to be honest about those feelings and confront. You said earlier about confronting things. And so I've heard a wise man say years ago that anything you're not willing to confront, you cannot change.
Sure.
talk about that whole idea of confrontation and therapy and how it helps us to confront issues in our lives.
Right. So as I said, nothing about therapy is easy. It really makes you, or really, I don't want to say force, but it definitely encourages you to look at those patterns and those maladaptive patterns, those behaviors that, whether it is the people around us, where
Mm-hmm.
those relationships, again, we have outgrown them, but out of comfort, we stay in them.
Mm-hmm.
Relationships where they are harmful to us. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
not just speaking about intimate relationships. This could be, our job. This could be, our parents, our
Mm-hmm.
siblings,
Mm-hmm.
extended family. It could be a myriad of things that are no longer serving us, but out of comfort, we remain there. We continue to be
Mm-hmm.
there. We stay there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And if we're not willing to confront those things, and that's to me what counseling, the goal of counseling, whether it's pastoral counseling, whether it's clinical counseling, the goal of it is to change. And my
Absolutely.
husband and I, we tell people when they come to us for pastoral counseling, we do not do clinical counseling, and we're very clear about that. And if, as pastors and those of you that are listening, if you're not a clinical counselor, please connect with clinical counselors so that you can refer your people. So we do pastoral counseling. We're going to pray with you. We'll tell you what the Word of God says. We'll help you discern spiritually what may be going on. But when it comes to clinical issues, we refer our members to places where they can get the type of help. And we also recognize that sometimes they have issues that they don't want to be not necessarily accountable to us in, because what we'll do is once we send them to counseling, they'll be accountable to us for them going, and we'll check in to see how's it going. They check in with us to let us know how it's going for accountability's sake, for pastoral accountability. But they may have some things that they don't want to uncover with us being their pastor. They may not want us to see them differently, or whatever. And so we want them to be totally honest and free and be able to, as the Bible says, be naked and unashamed, that transparency piece. And so, we'll send them to counselors, clinical counselors, whether it's for marriage or individually or family things or other professions that they may need, lawyers or accountants, and because people come to pastors for everything. They think we can
Sure.
fix it all, and we can't.
Absolutely.
And so we're very clear about that, and we're very clear with our congregants about what our limits of dissent are. And but the goal is, whether they're coming to us or whether we're referring them, the goal is to change. And so there are things that need to change in us, even in our world, that we can change if we get the tools. And I think you said it earlier, therapy gives us those tools and strategies for handling those stressors and making those necessary changes in our lives. You also said something about investing. You talked about spending the money for a therapist. And I hear this all the time. I can't afford to go to a therapist. I can't afford a life coach. I can't afford. And I'm amazed. I tell women all the time, look at that handbag you're carrying. I know what we spend on handbags. I see what people spend in the hair salon, and I go to the hair salon, and so I know what we spend. I saw on a meme recently on Facebook that women will pay to look good, but we won't pay to feel good.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
so talk about that whole, why do we need to invest in a therapist?
Right. So it is the same when you have a home, right? When you purchase a home, or even when you are renting a place,
Mm-hmm.
you want that place to be comfortable. You want it to be aesthetically pleasing, right? Because that
Mm-hmm.
is your palace.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you transfer that onto yourself, right? Your body is that palace.
Mm-hmm.
Going and investing in therapy would be paramount or equivalent
Wow.
to you purchasing a new home and you furnishing that home.
Wow. Wow.
And
Wow.
and remember, you may have a 30-year mortgage on your home, but you furnish it piece by piece by piece. That is
Mm-hmm.
the same type of investment, the same way that you need to look at yourself we are works in progress, and we are
Mm.
never going to be 100%. But you've got to invest. So, in as much as we will invest in shoes and clothes, and as you said, handbags and vehicles and things like that, you also have got to think enough of yourself to invest in you.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And I'm telling you, it has been one of the best investments I have made in myself. I made it in my mind 2 years ago to go to therapy. Now I've been to counselors. Um, I didn't just start going and seeking counseling 2 years ago, but when I decided that I was going to have a regular, consistent, ongoing relationship with a therapist, that I was going to add a therapist to my self-care board of directors. Just like I go to the gym, I pay a trainer. Just like I go to the hair salon, I pay a hairstylist. Just like when I go to the spa, I pay for the massage. I decided that I needed to have a regular, ongoing relationship with a therapist so that I could be healthy and whole and make sure that I was living a harmonious lifestyle. And so when I decided to do that, it really, really, really it made the difference in my life. It made a difference in how I operate. Even as a pastor, it made a difference in my relationships, even with my husband and my children. And let me just say this, because sometimes, when I first started, when I said I was going to come, this, I wanted my husband to come with me, and we've done counseling before, marriage counseling and things like that. But when I wanted to do this, I was like trying to let's do a therapist. And I had to realize this was for me. This was for
Right.
me. And so I had to stop trying to drag him and everybody else in there with me. I had to go for me. And when I finally let that go and decided this was for me, it made all the difference in my world and the way that I operate. It's been one of the best investments that I have ever made for myself. One of the best. And I want to thank you for being there for me. Um, she's not going to tell you she's my therapist, but I don't mind telling you that. Those of you that are listening, I don't mind telling you that. She's not going to tell you that because that's her profession, and she doesn't tell who her clients are. But I can tell you that being in therapy with Felicia has made a difference in my life, and I want to just say that. Felicia, you talked to us at the retreat about ways to redefine our stress, and you gave us a few little relaxation tips. Can you just share one or two of those little tips with us as we wrap up?
Sure. One of my go-tos are going to be using mindfulness and meditation
Mm-hmm.
and incorporating that into your day. And I think that, some people may think that, oh, it's difficult, but it's really not. There are so many apps that are out there that
Mm-hmm.
will help to kind of guide you in the process.
Mm-hmm.
Calm, Headspace, Stop, Think, Breathe. There are a litany of them. You just
Say those
search.
again. You said
Sure,
mindfulness, and I have mindfulness on my phone. I have that app.
sure,
Mindfulness. What was the other one?
sure. Stop, Think, Breathe
Stop,
is one.
think,
Stop,
breathe. Mm-hmm.
breathe.
Stop. STOP.
Calm,
Is it S?
STOP.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. hmm
Stop, think, breathe. Woo, that sounds relaxing already.
Correct. It could be where you also look at Calm, CALM,
Mm-hmm.
and Headspace.
Okay.
So, so those are tools that I like to use, especially when my folks are suffering with with anxiety. Sometimes when you just need to kind of self-regulate and calm, those are tools you could use. I tell people that going in and being active, being in the gym or maybe walking,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
those things help you as well because your body is releasing some of those feel-good chemicals.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Okay. Good, good, good. Listen, so what should we do in looking for a therapist? Those of us that are on here that do not have a therapist, what should they look for, and how do you go about finding the right therapist for you?
Sure. So I think searching for a therapist you should do it in the same way that you do shoes.
Okay.
So we go into Neiman's or Saks or wherever it is that you are shopping for shoes.
Mm-hmm.
You go and you try one. I would say that you want to maybe have a conversation. So most therapists will do a telephone consultation
Mm-hmm.
for
Mm-hmm.
5 or 10 minutes. Get some questions that you'd like to ask. Maybe what is their background, the type of people that they treat. You want to know about office hours, days, times, etc.
Mm-hmm.
You want to know about their experience. It's an interview.
Okay.
And
Okay.
then you want to go in for if that person meshes with you or bodes well with you, what you want to do is you go in for your appointment.
Okay.
And you have that conversation. You should feel comfortable. You should, again, it's not going to be easy. I'm not even going to sit and
Mm-hmm.
tell you that it
Mm-hmm.
is, but
Mm-hmm.
I think that you should leave that appointment, and it should give you several things to think about. Your mind should probably be
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
formulating questions for
Mm-hmm.
your next session or maybe in between sessions. And if the first therapist that you go to doesn't work out or you don't mesh well with the therapist, because remember, we're human too,
Mm-hmm.
don't stop. Don't stop. Keep looking until you find a therapist, because I promise you it is one of the very best investments in
Wow.
yourself that you will
Wow.
make.
And I have heard people say, "Well, I went to a therapist and I just didn't that therapist didn't do it for me, so I just don't go. I don't do a therapist." So you're saying if we go and if we don't have a good experience or it just didn't fit for us, don't stop. Keep looking, just like you keep trying on the shoe until you find the right one that feels right.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Okay, good.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for giving us those tips because we need that. We really need to know how to go about looking for a therapist because you're right. Most people don't know where to start and how we should approach looking for a therapist. And I always say also, ask for recommendations. I actually found
Absolutely.
you from a friend who recommended you to me. And I said to my friend in conversation, in very candid conversation, that I really want to do therapy. And she was like, "Hey, I got a therapist for you. You need to try her." And so I appreciate that. So sometimes in conversating with our friends and being honest with our girlfriends or other people in our lives, we can also be connected to the right therapist or at least try a therapist. So how can the listeners of this podcast connect with you either in person or virtually?
Sure. My telephone number is 678-459-8408. 678
Mm-hmm.
459 8408.
Mm-hmm.
People are welcome to call me. I always, anytime someone reaches out to me, I certainly do spend, a few minutes talking to them, seeing what they need. If, I'm unavailable at that time, I always set up a time where I could call them back later or the next day or what have you.
Mm-hmm.
And, we could have a discussion to see if I am the therapist for them. And if I'm not, then maybe seeing if there is a colleague who would be better suited to support that person.
Okay. 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 So what final word do you want to leave with those who are listening to this podcast today concerning therapy and self-care? Do you have a final message or a final word you'd like to share?
I would tell everybody as a departing word that you are important. And because you are important, you've got to focus on you. We tend to be very good and skilled at taking care of everyone else, but it's important for you to take care of you.
Mm, You are important. It reminds me of that. What's the show? The Help, and the maid said to the little girl, "You are." What she say? You is kind. You is smart. And you is important. And that's that. I love that show. I love that show. And I love that movie. I love that movie. And she says that. And you are important. You are important. And that's what self-care is about. Self-care is not selfishness. I tell people all the
Not at
time
all.
This is not about being selfish. Some people say, oh my goodness, we get real deep and spiritual and overly religious about stuff. And you know what? The Bible says, and I'm a pastor, and a theologian and a biblicist. So the Bible says to love your neighbor as you love yourself. You cannot love anyone else any better than you love your own self. So be kind to yourself. Be compassionate with yourself. And you'll find that if you're kind to yourself, you'll be kind to others. If you're compassionate with yourself, you'll know how to show mercy and compassion to others. So Felicia, I thank you so much for wrapping up our month. This is the inaugural month for the Harmonize Your Life podcast, and I am just so excited that you were a part of this inaugural podcast conversation or group of women who have been leading this conversation for us in the month of March. This is National Women's History Month, and so I specifically chose this month to release the podcast because I wanted women to know that they are important and that they need to care for themselves. And we stand on the shoulders of so many women in history who have taught us what to do and what not to do. And so thank you for being a part of this podcast community. We look forward to having you again real soon.
Thank you for having me.